Good morning, and good afternoon, depending on where you are. Happy to have you. Today we are going to pick up a bit further than when we left last time. So we are still working on the CockroachDB event log, which is a mechanism for outputting important events related to a cluster and with a structured format, meaning we want to have information in the output about the different fields corresponding to different aspects of an event instead of mashing all the data together into a single text string. The previous iterations were about creating different payloads for different event types, and we made some progress, and there was at the end we were looking at the RFC and we made some adjustments so that the text would be compatible with the work that we did. Today we are going to wrap up hopefully the main tasks here by changing the PRs that does JSON output to have all the fields printed as JSON natively. I think this PR is nearly ready already, and this one as well. So this will be probably done at the beginning. And then we need to ensure that the entries are decorated with the some information about the server, which otherwise would not be available. And once this is done, then we can start adding examples to the RFC, which we didn't have before. And separately, there is another item which was marked in the long tail, but actually belongs to the main task here. We have a special feature called auditing. It's a way to report when certain SQL tables are accessed. The operator can mark those tables sensitive, in which case any accesses to those tables will be reported. Today, the reporting for those accesses is using a flat text format again, which makes parsing a bit difficult. There was a request about this not too long ago. Someone was confused about it, and so it would be a good thing to have a structured payload for that as well. And then this is a last feature that is probably low key, low profile. When a particular cluster setting is set, we want all statements executed by privileged users to be logged as well. The idea being that in a secure setup, it's desirable to not let any normal user have administrator privileges. And so in the normal cases, in most of the cases, we would expect operators with fine-grained privileges to do this and that things, to be doing their management, with minimum privilege. That's a security principle called the principle of least privilege. And in that environment, if an operator logs in with an account that is too privileged, we want to know this. We want to highlight this happened. And the way to do that is to say that everyone who is an administrator, who is not used fine-grained privileges, needs to see a logging event for whatever they do. This way they get more scrutiny. So that is more or less the plan for today. These are relatively small entries or like items of work, and therefore I have really good confidence that today we can make a lot of progress. Behind the scenes, since last time, what happened? We were doing payloads for reporting structured events to the external output, and that had been successful, but what was missing was an ability to encode those payloads as JSON, and so that has happened in the behind the scenes, and so I will probably show a little bit of how that works. All right. So the first item on this list I already prepared a little bit before the stream started. So we have here a link to a previous PR that was mixing the integration with FluentD, which is something we did a very long time ago, with adding new JSON output formats. Now, to simplify the review of this change, which contains changes in multiple files, I have decided that it would be beneficial to split this PR in two. And so I already prepared a first PR that adds the JSON output formats and does only this with additional testing just for that feature. And that means that the new PR is not yet created, by the way, we're going to do that in a second, is going to be a prefix for this one. And that means that this one here now will need to be simplified accordingly. So the next two steps now, we're going to finalize the PR about the JSON output formats and then rebase this PR on top of it to simplify the Fluent support. The Fluent support is not part of the project for today, so that means that after we rebase this, we're not going to look at it further. But I still want it to be ready for review, so that's why we need to clean it up a little bit. All right. So the issue number, as usual, is at the bottom of the screen here. Let's make this font a little bit larger, like this. All right. So what do we have here? We have a JSON formatting abilities that had been created in this PR a long while ago, actually a couple of weeks ago, and I brought it up to date, and I wrote some documentation, and I improved the implementation, and we have now also a unit test that takes the different fields of different types and then emits them, and then we have here a reference output file that shows to the test what is the expected output for the JSON encoding. So what do we see here? This first line here indicates what is the event being printed, and the next 4 lines are the outputs using the 4 available variants of the JSON encoder. And what do we see here is that an entry that doesn't contain any field set will have minimal information set with a lot of the field set to 0 or empty. Then we have an entry with a structured payload. So it is structured, and the payload is a renamed database event. And then we see the 4 JSON encodings for this all preserve the timestamp. Event type, database name, new database name as a JSON payload inside the log entry. And something that was already specified in this issue here was to transform the single string tags payload of logging events into separate JSON fields. And this is what we see now here. The logging tags for that logging event are now decomposed as a valid JSON dictionary. That makes filtering and analyzing much easier. And then what we see here is that different JSON formats will have different names for the keys, for the dictionary keys. And then we have here an entry that is not structured, and so it just has a message instead of an event. And then we have another unstructured entry, but with reductible markers. And so what we see here is that this entry was not reductible, and so its logging tags didn't contain reduction markers. And this one here is reductible, and therefore it's both the logging tags, the context tags, and the message contains reduction markers. So this gives us a PR, really. So we have here a commit that is adding those output formats, the simplification of the other PR, and so we can create a PR for this change. Oh, I made a mistake. Actually, it's not complete. Why is it not complete? I also added, since the last time, a documentation generator, and now all the output formats will get automatically a reference documentation generated for them. But that also means that I need also to check in the generated documentation, which I did not do that yet. So that's what we're going to see now. We're going to see this reference documentation for the new JSON format pop out in the generated files. So I think it is done. It is here. So now we have 4 additional formats documented, and here is their documentation. So let's check the text of the documentation, see if there are no mistakes. This format emits log entries as JSON payloads. JSON objects guaranteed to not contain and escape new lines or special characters, and entry as a whole is followed by new log characters. This makes the format suitable for processing over a stream and ambiguously. Each entry contains at least the following fields. That is not correct. That means that we need to adjust this documentation. Actually, that is the following. So here we say, additionally, the following fields are conditionally present. And let's copy the header of this table. Let's do a little effort at aligning things, because that will make the review slightly more pleasant for the person reviewing it. All right, and now we are going to say all right, so this text about the redaction markers is present here. This one is at the beginning and needs to be present here. And now oh, actually, now this refers to the fields here, so we'll see here. When an entry is structured, so what's happening here is that I want to include backticks in my text, but the text also formed with the backtick string escape. That's a case where Go really could learn something from Python, where I can have additional string delimiters, which will make my life easier. The event field maps to a dictionary whose structure is one of the documented structured events. See the reference documentation for structured events for a list of possible payloads. All right. And then we are in a better place. So let's see if the documentation here looks nice. So what's going on here is that now the documentation is part of the source code, it's alongside the source code. There are 2 reasons for this. The number 1 reason is that there are multiple sets of fields depending on the format. The table here is going to be different. And as you can see here, the particulars of the text is also dependent on an external dependency. And therefore, if we want this text to remain up to date, even when the dependency changes, it's pretty useful to have this generated automatically. So let's review this text again.
At least the following fields, that's correct now. That's the name of the login channel, severity of the event, it's numeric identifier for the login channel, it's the name of the source file, where the event was emitted, it's the line number, entry number, the entry counter, is that always emitted? I think so, yeah. The following fields are conditionally present. So that's interesting. So actually I made a mistake about this. The counter is not relative on this sync, because if there are multiple syncs, the counter is going to be different per sync. The logging tags, the context tags for the entry if they were context tags, unstructured events of flat text payload, it's logging event if structured, stacks, coroutine stacks for fatal events. When entry is structured, the event field maps to a dictionary whose structure is one of the documented structured events. See the reference documentation. All right, there we go. And then we have the foreign formats, and here what you see is that the fields here are compact, so the names are shortened. And the reason is because they're common, they're shared on every entry. We want them to not take too much space to minimize the amount of traffic. And then we have those conditional entries, and then the text repeats because we have different. And so what's different with Fluent is that there is this tag fields added at the beginning. Someone may complain that this documentation is slightly repetitive in contrast with the other formats that are not, where this documentation is not as repetitive, but it's okay, right? For both documentation, in this case, since it's not too long, is somewhat acceptable, right? All right, so what's going on here? So I sent this branch to GitHub to create a PR, and it's showing me something that's completely unrelated. So what's going on is that I have a PR here, which is prefixed by a sequence of commits from other PRs. And the idea is that I am here performing a chain of work, and you see all the PRs open on my screen already. They are related to each other, and each of the PR is a previous one. And so that's a case where GitHub is not super smart, and that means that I need to tell it actually what is the commit message. Like this. And for the reviewer's benefits, I'm going to say that all commits are from, and now I take this one because I know that's the one immediately prior. That's how I created them. So that the reviewer can say, well, I'm not going to review this until this is reviewed, but then the reviewer can go to the previous PR, see that they can also review that, and then they will review that, and then if they go to the previous one, they will see that it's from a different one, so on and so on. So this way they can follow the chain of changes and go and start at the beginning, start the review at the beginning. All right. So this PR now is ready, and that enables us to go at this previous PR from a long while ago and simplify it, because now the JSON output formats are available. So this PR can focus on just adding compatibility for Fluent. And so I'm going to indicate also that this code was extracted from to further simplified. And now let's do the rebase for this one and simplify it accordingly. It is actually, so I mean, this PR is going to be simple to simplify because it was already simple to start with. But there is a little challenge, which is also that it needs some additional testing, I fear. So this one goes away. And now we can say we're going to keep this. We will need to resolve the merge conflicts, because of course there are merge conflicts.
Except that in this particular case, I can ignore, say, merge conflicts, because I know that this file doesn't need to be there anymore. So how do I do this? K, right? I want to say our stage. Yes, that worked. And then this file here was only testing the JSON outputs, and that I already have now. So this one can go away. And the other code now, I think, is relevant. I think the previous PR we just created is actually not complete, so we will need to come back to it. And then we're going to play a dance with a chain of PRs. There is a dance to be played, which is absolutely fascinating. Maybe I should start that keyboard logger that I usually run during a stream. Let's do that. Right? Yeah. All right, let's do this. All right, so we're going to check whether the test suite runs properly in the log config package. It does. And then in the log package as well. It doesn't. So why is it not? I don't know. That's because I still have this file lingering around, I think. Is it not? For my JSON test. I will come to this a bit later. So yeah, these tags here, this does not work at all. So why are tags printed at this? I think I know. All right, I have some idea about this. Cool. All right. So this means the previous PR was not actually complete, but this one is going to go away when we've completed the previous PR. So I can ignore this. And since that was the only failing test, this PR now is going to be simplified properly. And so everything else looks fine. And so I can complete the rebase and say, now this is an experimental feature. And now I can push this to GitHub. And now I can say here that the JSON part is updated. This is this. And now we are going to, okay, so this text here, fixes blah, 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 belongs to this one. Which means that this one can go away. However, I believe that we have an issue that this PR is fixing because I think we have network logging as a concern from earlier. If it is there, it is very old. Doesn't look like it. Syslog maybe? This one and this one. Let's see. This is interesting. And the reporting ad hoc solution. Okay, so this is actually fixed by one of the issues we had earlier. JSON serialization with reduction markers. This sounds fine. Yeah, this sounds this. this goes here. All right. ISO formatted dates. All right, so okay, so that, oh no, this issue is not being addressed actually, so I'm not going to look at it. All right, so this has been simplified. I don't think it's closing anything. I'm surprised though, because I have a feeling that it was actually already filed somewhere, but we're going to ignore it for now. What we're going to do instead, we're going to play the dance. So what is playing the dance? We have here a chain of PRs that all depend on each other as a sequence, which is great. But one of them has a mistake. Its CI is failing. I think it's, I don't know, this one maybe? Yes, this one probably is failing. Should fail. I'm expecting it to fail. Let's put it this way. So let's click here and let's see it actually failing. Does it fail? Yes, it's failing. So this one is failing its CI. That means that we need to change it and fix it. Once we fix this one, then the next one, which depends on it, is not based properly anymore and probably fails for the same reason. So I will need to rebase this one, and then means that I will need to rebase this one as well, and then need to rebase this one afterwards. That's the dance. So that is really a classic in the kind of work that we do in CockroachDB when we have teams that are not deeply integrated. So when you have two or more people who work together but not intimately, that means that they can't really review each other's work quickly, then one party might end up doing the work faster than it can get reviewed, and we get those chains of PRs. So the plus side, the reason why this does happen, so we let it happen, is that chaining the PRs in this way is actually not too complicated to review, and it's much better to have those changes split in multiple commits, and the PRs issued on GitHub makes it possible to review all the work asynchronously later. So all this makes really the workflow more flexible for the team as a whole. However, if there is some issue in the middle of the sequence, either because CI fails, which is the case here, or later on the reviewer comes along and says for one of the prefix PRs, well, I don't like this, or maybe you should change it, and so on. That means that after the change is performed in the prefix PR, we need to change and rebase all the PRs afterwards. This is a pattern of change that is occurring to me quite often, and I think that I have not been smart because it seems to be something that can be very well automated. I don't know yet how. And that means that I would need to think about it a little bit. But I've spent enough time on this now that spending a little more time to invest into automation might actually be a good next move. Except that's not what we're going to do today, because we have something to address, and we're still going to address it. All right, so this list here is not adequate anymore. So we are saying treat event type spatially inline. So that is this one. Oops. Transform the single string text payload of log JSON fields. That is also this one. That is not done yet, so we will need to do that in a second. All right. So this is done, and this is done, and this is done. Well, done. I click them off the list even though they're not reviewed yet. That's okay. That means don't need to spend too much time on that work anymore. So let's let's fix that CI failure. That is going to be a little bit of a game. All right, so what is it telling me? Let's zoom in. Format argument is not a constant expression, makes unstructured form. Okay, so this one is actually pretty easy to fix. So let's go there. Take this, and then this, and then log entry. And so the thing is complaining about this file, this function here. So it's saying that format in this function here is a variable that is not a constant expression. And we have a linter that wants this to be a constant expression. And it has something to do with security. The idea is that if it was not a constant expression, we would be violating some assertions, some guarantees, contracts we have defined in our login code, and unfortunately the Go language does not give us the const modifier for data types like you have in C or C++, which would enable us to indicate here that we have a const string that cannot be modified, that's not generated dynamically, except that Go doesn't have this. And so what we have instead is a linter, and the linter is giving us rules about how to do this. So make entry is not anymore a thing, and instead we have make unstructured entry, right? This table here is it's an input for a linter, which checks that the functions listed in this map are only accepting static literal strings, constant strings as input, or are given as input an argument that was otherwise already marked as constant because it is inside a function which already has this marker. And that recursively. That means that this linter here, which is telling us this function here, that this function here is not agreeing with the fact that format is not constant. Now that we have meta-structured entry here in this list, and its argument format is going to be marked as constant, and so it works out. So we're going to try it out. So it's going to be lint test is test roachfed, I think. Yes. So roachfed is a test that lasts for a little while. That means that we might need to wait a little bit. So what's going on here? Before it can build this lint test, it needs to build the entirety of the source tree. And then once that is done, it's going to build the roachfed program. And then once that is done, it's going to run it. And the running of it will also invoke the compiler. It's going to call gofet, and gofet will in turn call roachfed, which will in turn call the Go compiler. I'm crossing my fingers that this is going to report success. And if it's not, it's going to tell us what to do, which is great. So that's a case where I could be lazy. I could just commit this change, send it to CI, and let CI tell me what to do. That's usually what I do. This way I can switch over to a different PR. We have enough work tasks to be carrying out. And this way I can be asynchronous and have the CI run, tell me later what I need to do. The thing is though, a CI run is a while, and we still have these rebases to go about afterwards. And the idea of rebasing multiple times, the remaining 3 PRs, it's not appealing to me. And so I'm willing to literally turn my thumbs around each other for a minute or two now to get this PR in a pristine state, because that will save me time later. Let's see. Even on a fast computer, there's a lot of source code to analyze. I could perhaps have been more specific. I could ask Rochefort to only test one of the linters. Rochefort is a collection of many linters. We have something like 20 to 30. Ah, you heard that noise? That means you succeeded. Let's go. Let's go. That means we fixed it. Fix, commit this, and push. And then this one is going to be done. This one is going to restart. And now we're going to do the dance. Rebase the other two. This one also we said was not complete. There was a mistake in this one. Was it? No, it's the JSON was not complete. So let's see. This one might be complete actually. Just need the rebase. So this is complete. We are going to check briefly though that the generated files are all in the PR. This one is fine. Then we can take this one and rebase it as well. And this one is not complete. There are 2 problems with it. I'm going to show them. So the first one is we have a number of generated files that I probably forgot to include in the PR. Let's say what it says. Yeah, so this one needed to be added. And now the other problem is that the test is not deterministic. It fails. So what's going on here in this test? This test is complaining that when we have logging text here, every time we run the test, this value is different, and therefore the output fails. That is because despite my best effort to make the value of the payload deterministic, the tags field is a pointer, and the pointer is to a heap allocation object, and the address of that object is different every time we run the program. So that means that this print out in the reference output is not going to be good for this test. So we are going to simply remove it. Write byte string. And then let's do this. Rewrite. Verify. Then verify it works without rewrite. Multiple times. There we go. Cool. Now that is better. Now this one has been rebased. And now we can rebase this one, same dance. there's a conflict, which is not surprising because this file is automatically generated, but it's an easy enough test. And we're going to validate whether as the generated files are fine. I think they are. Right? Yeah, they look fine. That's all right. We finished the dance. So what this dance gave us is updated PRs from this one to this one. So we had 3 to adjust. So it's not as bad as if we had, for example, to start from the very beginning. Anyway, so this part of the work is done. And then what we need is to look at this. And then we can possibly look at the others afterwards. So this one is it's an extension of a change which I put in not too long ago. Which one's this one? This one. So there is a prerequisite, which was this, but we will have another PR number coming afterwards. This one was just a prefix for it. And we need to extend this with the fields that we need. So we do this, take this branch, and then create a new branch out of it. And how do I call it? JSON context. Choosing names for branches is just so difficult. All right. All right. Cool. Cool. So what's going on here? We have a payload that we want to have inside our log entry. So we have those 4 fields here. And we really would like to have them inside the JSON events. But these are fields on a logging T object. And this format JSON function does not have access to a logging T object. So we need to do some plumbing. All right. So these 4 values are contextual information that is shared by all the logging events. And so why would we care to have them in the JSON payloads? So if you look at the log file output, so when the user is using a log file sync, the value for those fields is printed out at the beginning of every output file. And that means that given that the unit of logging with a file is a file itself and not the individual lines inside the file, then it's reasonable to say to the user, well, if you want to know the value of those 4 fields, you can just go at the beginning of your file and then look at where they are there, where is that printed there. That's reasonable because if a user has a file, they have the entirety of the file most of the time, actually. We don't really like users to cut their files up in pieces. And so we always kind of, in the relationship with users, we always kind of assume that they share entire files, log files with us. And every new file will have a copy of those values at the beginning. But with JSON, it's a very different story because if a user is using JSON for interchange and sending logging output to different places, JSON logging is what is called contextless. What's the word? I'm forgetting the words. I learned this at school. It's missing, so it works without context. The idea is that it should be possible for a interpreter or a reader of the JSON data to pick up the logging in the middle, like at any point, and understand what's going on from that. And so to make that possible, it's important that any relevant information to give context to log entries is present inside the stream on every line. Either that or have periodic intermediate lines to share the common context. But given that we want to interface with Fluent is not very interested, it's not very good at, neither designed for having what are called context lines in between non-context lines. And so it's desirable to have everything in the same place. And so to achieve this, we need to put this payload to copy this payload in every log entry. So that's actually kind of a tricky bit. Why is it tricky? It's because these are fields that are under a mutex. And I don't like mutexes because that means I would need to acquire the mutex every time. That doesn't seem right. Seems very unpleasant, in fact. Let's see. So what's going on is that these fields can be overwritten. Are actually going to be overwritten asynchronously. When the logging starts, these fields are unset, and it's only after a server has started and after it has completed its initialization that it knows the value of those fields. And so the server will say to the logging system, here are the values for those fields. And it's going to write them asynchronously. And that means that if I want to read them, we need to be sure to hold this mutex, which is not pleasant. We don't really like to hold mutex. Let's see how to share those values in a way that's efficient. Maybe with a read-write mutex. Maybe. So yeah, maybe, probably. I am hesitating here. If I add a read-write mutex, someone is going to make a comment on this that is not efficient. If I don't add a read-write mutex, then someone else is going to complain that what's going to complain is the Go race detector is going to say that these values are being set asynchronously. What do I need to know? What do I need to know about this? What do I need to know about this? Cluster ID. How does the file output gather this file sync buffer? Oh, it's in get start lines here. So it does acquire the mutex. All right. If that's what it takes, then it is what it takes. We're going to protect these 4 values under read-write mutex. Read-write mutex has these interesting features that it's actually much more compact and efficient than a full mutex. And we're only going to use it for those 4 values. So I take this, and we are going to say id mu struct sync util mutex, and then this. Test question mark. So what is this test question mark referring to? I don't understand. What are you trying to ask? Oh, I see. Well, welcome in the chat then. You are doing it right. I saw your messages and they work. You can even add emotes. Cool. Okay, so what I did here, I extracted those 4 fields behind what is called a mutex, a read-write mutex. And more than that, I'm going to go even one step further and say it's going to inherit ID payload. The reason why I want this is because this struct is going to be copied into the log entry. Yep. All right, so let's explain what's going on here. Copy this. Come on. Stage. Yes. All right. Extract, say, contextual identifiers from log80. This change makes it possible to access, say, cluster ID, etc. Without holding logging.mu. Multiple read. Right. And now that we have this ID payload here, we can copy it to the log entries. here. And then we have here, say, make entry. And that's going to be there we go. Still works, I suppose. Yes, it does. Are the little bips coming from my machine? Oh, see you in that, nerds. Yes, they are. This is a program, a script, in fact, I created. It is in the homepage of the Twitch screen, by the way, Twitch stream. It's called BX. No, it's called X, excuse me. And what it does, it sends a melody on the speaker based on the exit status of the command. The idea being that this way, when there is a command that takes a little while, I don't have to look to know when it's finished. So I can come back to the terminal just when it's needed. And also, if I'm doing something else, I might not care if the command succeeded, but if it fails, then I will probably come back to it earlier and then try to adjust something. So that's what it's doing. All right, so now I have my entries here. And we are going to format them inside the JSON output if they are available. For this we need additional tags. So the node and access. Then we have the server. So what's the sequence ID? That's for SQL servers in multi. And then we have the tenant. I think T is not taken yet. Is T not taken yet? Yeah, I should be careful to not use capital letters. Oh, actually I can use capital letters. Okay, see you next time. Sorry, I did not see your message earlier. No dev speaker on Linux. There was a dev speaker on Linux in the past, but it's been removed from the kernel. It can be emulated, so there is a command play melodies on the digital sound output. All right. Node ID, instance ID, tenant ID. Let's go. Then we'll need to document all this. We'll probably need to have special cases here, actually. We'll come back to this in a second. It's for documentation purposes. So timestamp, so the tag, channel. Probably this timestamp should be emitted first. Doesn't it? I'll see about the order later. So, server identifiers. And so that's where we are going to do the thing. Right, and that's where we do the thing. This one. If entry .cluster ID, and then we're going to do all the things. Entry.node ID, entry.tenant ID. Cool. And now we can do the thing. Here, I can make an assumption that the cluster ID, I could make an assumption the cluster ID is a UID and therefore does not need to be escaped, but except I actually don't trust the rest of the code to be like that. With the lack of trust, what can I say? This is going to be the node ID. As a node ID is going to be an integer, and then I can say this, like this, and this is going to be like this, and then it's going to be like this, and going to be entry.node ID. This and this. All right, and then this is going to be the same as this, with a T here and a tenant ID here, and this one is the same as this one with a SQL instance ID. Like this. And now, cross my fingers that the JSON format is going to stay neutral, because that's good actually. Tenant ID. It's not a string. Oh wow. So it says n has been used already. So n is a node ID, and n is probably is a line number as well, isn't it? No, it's entry counter. Well, of course. So it's going to be capital N. Thank you. Access. And already have a channel. Really would like to have the cluster with letter C. Instance ID, tenant ID, we'll see. Someone's going to complain that those one-letter acronyms are not good for readability. This is going to be a T. No, that's going to be a Q. It's going to be an N. And then say 233, tenant ID is a string. There we go. So the basic JSON format has not complained because the entry does not have yet the identifiers set. And so now we're going to do this. Payload. Access. And then tenant ID. And then SQL instance ID. And then rewrite this test. What's happening here? Better. All right. So let's inspect this. Channel, timestamp, cluster ID, node ID is fine. Next one, tenant ID, SQL instance ID. Cool. And we are going to verify the generated documentation. And we'll need to do a little bit of adjustment on the generated documentation, I'm expecting. Formatting. So what we see here is that those fields are now listed inside the table unconditionally, and that is not adequate, because these are like these fields are conditional, and so we need to indicate that fact in the generated documentation. And so the way to do this is to skip over certain of these keys. Strings that index of C in multi server identifiers is not -1, then forget about them. And server identifier fields needs to be inventorized here. And XQT. index, that's not the right one. Index byte. All right, this way. So I probably how to do this. Yeah, don't need to do it this way. I should probably have updated this. Okay, so that means one of the other PRs is not up to date either. We'll see. All right, so my conditional fields are not mentioned anymore, and so we're going to do that here. And that is going to be a tricky one. Is it? No? Is it going to be a tricky one? Not really. This. And now we are going to say only reported for single tenant or KV servers. Known only reported for multi-tenant SQL servers. Cool. So this is now connected. But that does mean that we probably will need to adjust this one, because I think the documentation output on this PR is not correct. We'll see. That seems about right. And we can even try it out on the command line, probably. So cockroach demo empty log is syncs to dr format JSON filter info. Sounds about right. Sounds about right. Not in the. I'm not seeing my. I'm not seeing my. Maybe it's not there. No, should be. I'm not seeing my cluster identifier. That is frustrating, isn't it? So channel numeric, storage, severity, coroutine, file, entry counter, reductible, and I don't see the cluster identifier. What's going on here? Oh, because the demo command does not register its identifiers when it starts. Okay, well. We are going to make that happen in a separate commit, but in the meantime, we can confirm this not demo with a start command. So here we go. Cluster ID, node ID. Sounds much better. There is a little bit of redundancy. The tags also list the node ID, but it's because some logging tags, some of the logging contexts for a given server don't report the logging tags. And so it's better to report them in this place. So let's see. We're going to register this, and then register this, and then this one, and then this one, and then this, this, this. This is a change we made. More. Okay. And then test entry. And this change to the doc file is actually from a different PR, which we did not properly do. So we're going to do that in a second. So we can do this. Report the server identifiers in JSON entries and payloads. When using JSON output formats for log entries, say server identifiers are now reported as part of each payload once known. Either cluster ID plus node ID in single tenant or KV servers, or tenant ID plus SQL instance ID in SQL multi-tenant servers. All right. It's a new PR, and we'll need to rebase that in a second because of the other thing that we just saw, but it's okay. Cool. This will go now here. And we mark this as completed. And maybe this one. This is done by this PR. Fixes. Success. All right. And we have now a last thing to do for this PR is a auto generation. I think that we changed this and we did not output. No, that's not this one. This one is fine. It's really this one that needs to have it. I think. Yes. And now we're going to verify this by rebuilding the documentation. Let's see if nothing changes. So that was it. All right, so adjust this, I push it. Oops. Which means that we can now take our new branch, JSON context, and replace this one. And then push this. Good. Okay, so we fix that. And yeah, well, we achieved a lot. So this issue here is not yet really, I mean, we can try. It's not a lot of work, probably. We're going to check in a second whether we can afford doing that. And otherwise, the RC change and putting some examples in the RC probably is going to be interesting as well. All right. However, it's been a lot of work in 1.5 hours. We need a break. It's very important to relax for a few minutes and not sit at the computer for too long. So that's what I'm going to do now, and you should probably do the same. So I'm going to take 5 minutes. So we're going to reconvene between now and 5 past the hour. All right. See you in a few minutes. And we are back on air. Cool. I hope that you all did not forget to hydrate. All right. So we're going to make a modest attempt at doing this item here. If it's simple, and if it is not, we are going to directly modify the RFC instead. This is a different... Ooh, what a luxury when PRs are being reviewed. All right. Thanks for your review, Bilal. So that's the one. So I have a PR here that is doing the authentication connection logs, and we want to one for the sensitive access. And so it's going to be very similar. So the way that this PR worked, we're going to reminisce a little bit how it goes. It creates some proto file, and then it will use them in different places. So let's do that. And we can actually start from master for this because we already have this infrastructure. We don't. Audit events. So what we have is SQL exec log.go. And this is currently explaining to the readers that the logging format is what it is, which is not great. And what we want instead is to put this into structured events. All right. How does this work again? Say application name. Application name. Maybe we want to consider adding the application name, so I'm going to add this. We can do this. We can do this probably first, because we have the information for this, I think. Secret config. Seems to be right. App name. I think. Would that be right? I trust this to be true, and then pass it here. Log event interval. Disk ID user. We'll get to fix the bugs in a second. Events. Where are they? Application util log event pb SQL events.proto application name. Was emitted. This is included in the event to ease filtering of logging output by application. There's a lot of stuff in Postgres and CockroachDB that are a matter of application name. So we're going to include this now. Let's try this. Okay. What is details here? Create stars detail. Statement. Maybe it's going to be missing. Okay, let's see. Let's try. Let's try. How do I include this? Let's see. Cockroach demo. Yeah, JSON is not available. Filters info. And so we have it. Application name is here. All right, this works. And the field is sensitive, and that is fine. It's not safe for reporting, so we're good. We're good. That does mean that we are going to get the application name in the logic tests. So look at the application name here. Yep. All right. That is good. Physical structured test include say sessions, session name, as field application name. This is intended for use by event filtering when performing event filtering while setting up event routing filtering external tools. There we go. Oh, sorry, that's just half of the work. Event log. Also, that's a PR on its own, isn't it? Yeah, that's a PR on its own. Small PRs. Small PRs are important. And I'm seeing here. That's a good comment. I will come back to this in a second. Needed before experimental audit logging can be ported to structured events. All right. Now, what do we have in this? So, application name is already filed. Label is a logging label. What's a log label? I don't know what a log label is. What is log label? Let's enable that logging and see what it says. No, that's not the way it works. Create table. Say int alter table t experimental audit read on select. How does that work again? Oh, set. Set. Read, write. No, we are not distinguishing between read and write. Okay, well, that works. Set. Wow. Cool. All right, so how does this work today? I get a exec. Okay, so the logging tag is exec because I could have prepare. Oh, that's what it is. It's a query mode. Exec means execute, prepare means prepare, and probably there might be something else afterwards. All right. And then we have the application name. Then we have the audit string description things and the copy of the statement that is being issued, but we won't need that anymore because we already have it in the event. And then the placeholders, I think. And then the query execution time, the number of rows returned, the error, if any, and something else. So what that something else is, I don't know yet. Num retries. PLSTR. What is PLSTR? Yes, that's this here. So that's the that is a logging payload. All this needs to become structured. All right. All right. We probably want one audit event per table instead of combining them like this. All right, yeah, let's do this. Instead of having one event with everything combined, we can emit one event per table. That's much simpler, much clearer as well. All right. All right. Events.proto. And what do I have here? MySQL event. Do you have sensitive access here? No, we don't. Okay. Audit. All right. SQL. SQL access audit events. Are generated when a table has been marked as sensitive audited. Yes. All right, and then we're going to have sensitive table access when access is performed to a table marked as audited. Descriptor ID is already in the common SQL event details. Then we have the access mode. How the table was accessed. Then this is going to be later on a non-sensitive field. Do we already have this, or is it going to be a separate? I think it is in this file here that reduction markers get a particular annotation to tell that to the generators that some fields are insensitive. So let's see. This one, maybe this one. Yeah, this one. This one's fine. This one, yes, I need this. All right. Next one, secret ID we already have, and we will need some of those fields here. So. How the statement was being executed. And that's also a non-sensitive field. So we have the log trigger. Log trigger is this, yes. Then we have a statement, then the placeholders. Placeholder not part of the statement being logged. I probably need to add that later on. Okay. Need to find an issue for this. Add placeholder values alongside. Yeah, I don't really want to care about that for now. So H, what is H? Oh, it's the how long the statement has executed. H. Microseconds. Query duration? No. Yeah, maybe. Yes, query duration. Oops. This probably needs to be logged for every SQL statement as well. Yeah, let's add this here. Also query age. This way is going to be shared. And the log mode is going to be the same, I think. Exact type, I'll see later. The number of rows executed. Yes. Then whether there was an error. All right. Number of times a statement was retried. All right. Then I'm going to say to do knz re-adds the placeholders and age into the logging event. That's where we do the thing. Okay. That goes away. And then we have a thing here. Table name. Oh, maybe I should not have deleted this right away. Table name is after get name. And descriptor ID. Oh, can I use this function if I do this? Oh, yes, I can. Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. That's brilliant. Cool. Table name. Access mode is mode. And then I have exec mode. It is the LBL. Then we have the numeros is going to be this. Then we have error, and that's going to be error is not nil. And then we have retries, that's going to be no retries. And then we say p dot, oh my gosh, I hope I have a p here. Oh, yes, I do. I have a C6 as well. Yes, I do. And I have a descriptor ID. Yes, I do, which is after test.get ID. And I have an event. And the event I'm not even going to add like this. I'm going to say it like this. There's one big thing here. Go away. Poof, 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 poof. That is awesome. So now I can build this and we're going to try it. I hope that everything is going to be fine. Oh. Hmm. The logging channel is missing. Yes, it is. Of course it is missing because I forgot to add my new file. DTL, so I need to add it here. Let's go with it. All right, so actually I need to rename this file too. Okay. So now I have two new files here, and this has added some channels. Sensitive access, I have it. Declare not use, yes, that is correct. I don't need this anymore. And then we are we need to simplify this. Log line. So all this is going to become structured event soon, but we need to start with the non-logging output. Oh, example execution log. Okay, I can go back to this, and then this goes out, and then placeholder values. Yeah. Let's try it. So create a table, enable it, and then select, and then we have a structured event. Application name, select, access mode R, exec mode exec. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. I think we're going to send this PR in, and it's going to be the end of the session. It's been a bit of a while. Also, I have someone at the door. I'll be back in a minute just to finish this. Give me 2 or 3 minutes and we'll conclude this. All right, we are back on stream and we have a PR that is nearly complete. I don't know if we need nub retries for sensitive table access. How was this written originally? Yeah, so we're not going to include num retries in this. If a user wants to have information about num retries, they can go and enable, say, a slow query log or something like this a bit later. We can do this. Exec mode. I don't feel sure yet about this, but we'll see. Num rows and error. So num rows is because in a security setting, if an administrator is concerned about access to sensitive tables and in the sense that they detect something has been accessed that should not be accessed, then it's also important to measure the impact. Maybe this needs to be written here. Can be used to determine whether any information was leaked or transformed. A value of 0 indicates the operation. Well, actually, that's not exactly true. Depends. That depends. All right. Let's compile this again, and then we're also going to start. Do we have a unit test for this? Somewhere? Yes, we do. And this one can be removed. Ooh. This is not great. What's going on here? Let's try to figure out the beginning of this, when it started. That was all there I can put. All right, this needs to be filed, it's an issue. Did that not succeed? log spam or tight loop around auto. I was running a demo session and ran the following statement. Then I let my session sleep for a few minutes. Then when I came back, my terminal and log files were full with the following messages. Running in a tight loop with no end in sight. So who is doing jobs these days? Let's say it's this person. And she's a bug. And it's about jobs. And I'm going to say schema and bulk IO. There we go. Cool. Yeah, so I was saying this test file here does not need to exist anymore. Because the tests that is performing can become a logic test instead. And that is okay. Okay, this is permission checking. So we're going to add this here. Okay, and then we're going to access the tables. The first one is to be a write, and the second one is to be a write. So what we're expecting here is an audit event for T1 and 1 here for both T1 and T2, whereas the one for T1 here is a read only and this one is a read write. Mm-hmm. Oh no. That doesn't seem right. Oh yeah, yeah. That is not great. I'm going to come back in a sec. So what happened here? Did I get an error? That doesn't look like it. So what did I get? What's going on here? I don't even see my statements here. What's going on? Is it because I just have one file? Maybe? I don't know. It's not. Oh. Yeah. Okay, I see. I see. So what is going on here is that, say, event logging as is specified here is happening at the end of the statement execution at a time where the system.event log table is not available anymore. And so the API we're using here is expecting the transaction to still be active, and that's not the case here. So we are going to turn this into a different situation. We can't write a statement here. So we're going to say false, true. only log. Yeah. Okay. This system event log option, and that is going to be false. At this point, the transaction may have completed. We cannot afford to try to write to system. This event is only available through external logging. And now I'm going to have a bunch of errors. That's okay. I can deal with errors. Create stats. Going to be true. And this one. What's going on here? Log event with system and log option. And it's a return. Sounds better. All right. Except that apparently my event logging did not get any event logged. That is not great. Why? Because maybe. Oh, yeah. Never mind. This is SQL, and like needs to end with the percentage sign. Still not? I'm not being lucky here. Suppose I were to remove this here, what would that get me? So I have a lot of events. Okay, do I get the events I care about at the end? I don't. So those audit statements don't seem to have worked properly, do they? But they do have a Oh. Ah. Yes. 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 Okay. 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 So never mind. So I'm actually completely making a fool of myself. All right. All right. So this is absolutely not great. Not at all the right way to do this. So I did git rm blah blah blah, and that was a mistake because I have events that are not going to system.event log table. So as they're not going to event log table, so I cannot test them here. Obviously, they are not in the system.event log table. So here I can select them from there. Yes, but because they're not in the event log table, I can't even test this in this file here. So like this entire approach is completely mistaken. So what do? We need to actually restore this file, then change it, and so on. But all this is actually exceeding my time budget for this stream. So I'm going to keep it quiet for now, and I'm going to do this off stream, and we're going to recap what we worked on today. All right, so this was the PR we were working on that actually needs more work. So what did today? We had the JSON formatting, and then ensures that the JSON output is correct, has unit tests. Then the tags were in line in the JSON output, node ID, tenant ID, SQL instance ID, and so on in the logging entries, update documentation, and added the application name. So that is a PR that we are working on. Oh, actually, no, it's already been done, right? Maybe, I think I just did this PR to add application name. Yes, that is this one. Ta-da. And that still needs to be done. Cool. Well, that was progress. Plus this little dance of rebasing PRs, and there is probably more work to be done about that. But anyway, so this was it. Worked on logging today. Had fun with JSON. Lots of JSON on the screen, and there is more to come. And hopefully by next stream, I don't know when it's going to be, but we're going to have some demo recording session where we will be working on documentation and teaching materials for people to understand how this all works. And so that's that. Cool. Well, thank you for attending. Thank you for being there. And we will see each other again probably next week. I think I'm going to do the stream next week. So that's that. Enjoy your end of the week. People who celebrate Christmas can have a nice Christmas, and people who don't celebrate Christmas have a nice end of the week that is likely to be quiet. Enjoy, and have a great weekend. Goodbye.